Special thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's video. So, why exactly are dead captains going to hell now in Bleach? With the release of the now legendary Hell chapter, and the start, maybe, of the elusive Hell arc of Bleach back in 2021, Kubo opened the floodgates to a ton of new information regarding the series' most mysterious element up until then. Yes, Hell was one of the earliest realms we were introduced to in Bleach, showing up prior to even the Gotei 13's true introduction, but it was then sidelined completely for the rest of the manga, only resurfacing in a non-canon movie and tie-in chapter that Kubo has since seemingly distanced himself from. However, in 2021, to mark the series' 20th anniversary, Kubo released a new chapter that surprised everyone, to say the least. Rather than being a slice-of-life catch-up to see how all the characters are doing, the chapter instead continued the manga story from chapter 686, and seemingly set up a totally new story arc at long last involving Hell itself, putting the spotlight directly on the realm of the damned as perhaps the series' newest battleground, plot mover, and yes, maybe even home to its newest villainous organisation. Now, while nothing has come to fruition just yet, with my personal bets being on Kubo waiting for the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime to finish before announcing anything definitive regarding the franchise's future, that Hell chapter nonetheless introduced us to a ton of new lore, iconography, characters, concepts, and more that has helped to flesh out and set up Hell as the next exciting location for Bleach, tying it into the story in a brand new way as well. A way that seems purpose-built to bring back, to resurrect old and new characters from beyond the grave, ensuring the possibilities for said Hell arc are much deeper than they first appear. So let's take a look at everything new that we know regarding Hell itself thanks to the start of the Hell arc. The established hierarchy, the new characters and creatures, the iconography, its role in the universe of Bleach as is now established, and more. Remember guys that if you enjoyed today's video to consider hitting subscribe down below. We're on our journey to 300,000 subs by the end of the year, and it's only going to be possible with your help. So if you are brand new to the channel, or if you're not new and you simply haven't hit that button yet for whatever reason, consider doing so today, as it really does make a huge difference. Also check out my Patreon as well, where you can go to support the channel that extra step further in a way that is making a real, tangible difference here, and again, I do greatly appreciate it. And speaking of supporting the channel, before we continue, first a word from today's sponsor. So I've been trying to put together an additional office space in my house to switch things up a bit for when I edit videos, and to help make Jade's work from home situation a bit more comfortable too. In order to do that, we needed some brand new, exciting office space gear, and where better to start than with a new office chair. And of course that's where the sponsor of today's video, FlexiSpot, comes in. FlexiSpot are long-time supporters of the channel. In fact, I'm using their C7 office chair as we speak. But this is maybe even more exciting. Say hello to the FlexiSpot BS5, a colourful ergonomic office chair with a cloud-like cushion. Now, this particular chair caught my eye for a few reasons. Firstly, I love the look. The chair comes in a variety of colours, including even light green or pink, and so I think you can find a version to fit any potential office space. But more importantly than that, the chair is ergonomic, featuring a bespoke 3D support system that provides comprehensive support for the neck, spine, and lumbar region, which even helps to alleviate fatigue during those long periods of sitting down, which for me, when I'm editing videos, can be quite a while. The BS5's trademark cloud-like cushion I mentioned earlier is an 11cm thick sponge cushion, again designed to mould to the natural shape of the body, while the chair's adjustable recline means it can tilt up to 135 degrees to help prevent muscle strain and back pain. Look, I appreciate this all makes me sound like an old man, and to be fair I am, but it's also so important to look after yourself with a properly designed ergonomic chair when sat at a desk for hours on end, as I'm sure so many of us are. So if you're in need of a new office chair, the FlexiSpot BS5 could be exactly what you're looking for. FlexiSpot offers a 60-day return policy, meaning you can try any of their chairs totally risk-free, and a 5-year warranty on top. Make sure to follow the links down in the description and the pinned comment below to visit the website, or if you're interested in the BS5 specifically, there's a link directly to that too. Thanks again to FlexiSpot for supporting the channel by sponsoring today's video. Alright, but let's start with that new role, as it's the most pertinent thing introduced by the Hell chapter, completely upending what we thought we knew of Hell and its status in the Bleach universe beforehand, while also setting up the realm to be the main mover, the main power player of the plot going forward. While you could argue that we simply didn't really know anything about Hell beforehand, aside from the fact that hollows who sinned in life were sent there upon being cleansed by a Zanpakuto, there's no doubt that this new direction for the realm is designed to open it up in a big way, leaving it ripe for expansion when given an arc of its own in a way no one could have predicted beforehand. Before the Hell chapter, really, the only thing we knew about Hell in Bleach was, well, just that, just what I said, that where hollows were concerned, it basically acted as the opposite of the Soul Society. When a hollow is cleansed by a Shinigami Zanpakuto, their soul is judged essentially in that very moment, and then they go to one of two places. If they led a good life as a human, their soul will be sent to the Soul Society, regardless of the fact they were a hollow. However, if they led a wicked and evil life as a human, their sinful soul will instead go to hell, as was the case with Shrieker in the manga, who was a serial killer in life. What I like about this is that it shows the soul isn't being judged on the fact they became a hollow. Even if they went on to devour innocent souls, it's as though hollows are thought of as animals, effectively driven only by instinct. It's the same, I guess, as, say, condemning a shark for attacking and maybe even eating a person when it clearly wasn't done out of malice, it's just how those animals, those creatures live. Now, this isn't completely accurate either, though, as it's pretty obvious that sophisticated hollows like Grand Fisher and the aforementioned Shrieker are intelligent and well aware of the evil deeds they are committing and even take joy in it, but there definitely seems to be an element of hollows will do as hollows do when it comes to their judgment. Also, we don't know the ins and outs of how pluses are judged either, or if they even are. When a Shinigami performs Konso on a plus, will that plus also go to hell in the same way a hollow would if they were evil in life? I assume so, right? Because if not, then that's a whole other can of worms. Then there actually is some inherent bias, some inherent judgment based on the fact the soul being exercised was a hollow after all. Anyway, we're going off on a tangent there. Thanks to the Hell chapter, however, Hell's role within the Bleach universe has deepened dramatically, in such a way that it's totally transformed the way we look at the universe of Bleach itself. Kyoraku reveals to the Gotei 13 that Shinigami of Captain caliber possess reishi that is too dense to be reabsorbed back into the Soul Society itself upon death, and so ever since its inception, the Gotei 13 has performed a ritual called the Konso Reisai for these dead captain-level Shinigami, designed to help them peacefully move on. However, Kyoraku reveals that there was an old wives' tale that accompanied this ritual, a secret, horrible, maybe truth, that rather than help them to move on and find peace, the Konso Reisai ritual was in fact sending these powerful souls to hell instead. Now, considering this seemingly far-fetched idea turns out to be spot on, I do kind of wonder where this old wives' tale began from in the first place. But with the disappearance of the immense powers of both Aizen and Yhwach, and the subsequent sending of 3 extraordinarily powerful souls to Hell in the wake of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, the gates of Hell itself have now broken open, and Hell appears to be literally spilling over into the other worlds, simultaneously revealing this old wives' tale to actually be true. And, as of the end of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, the souls of Yamamoto, Unohana, and Ukitake have joined any previously deceased captains in Hell as well. Not only does this totally transform the role of Hell itself in Bleach, giving the once enigmatic realm enormous relevance on a grand universal scale, it completely rewrites the way we as readers now look at previous character deaths in the series. As long as they were given the Konso Reisai ritual, and there's no reason to believe the vast majority of them weren't, every single deceased captain-level Shinigami should now be in Hell. And considering there's an entire generation of ancient, brutal, bloodthirsty Gotei 13 captains presumably now waiting in the darkness, some for potentially hundreds of years at this point, well, that sounds like the perfect setup to an arc in my book. So, having said all that, perhaps the biggest new aspect of Hell is just that, its new prominent role within the lore. No longer is it a simple side note, something that's barely even considered by the cast even after countless battles. Instead, it's been propelled to the forefront and seems ready to take up the mantle as the host of a totally new arc that threatens to change the Bleach universe forever. But with the most, I guess, abstract reveal out of the way, let's take a look at the new, more tangible elements of Hell that have now been introduced into the lore of Bleach as well. Those that kind of line up with elements present in other races. Every race in Bleach has its own method, for example, of transportation. The Shinigami use the Senkaimon to move about, while the Rankai use the Garganta. Meanwhile, the Quincy's move from location to location via the shadows, and it seems like the denizens of Hell will also have their own bespoke portal system as well. Although these doors don't have their own name just yet, we can see from the Hell chapter that they have a completely unique design, resembling horrifying, gaping, screaming mouths lined with rows of teeth. Honestly, it's kind of awesome, it's very visceral, it's kind of terrifying, and it's exactly what I'd expect from Hell. Now, the Hell Gates themselves are still present too, as seen at the end of the chapter, though it's unclear what kind of a role they play now when compared to these new mouth portals, though we'll get into that in a minute. Xyloporo arrives in Karakura Town through one of these mouths as well, which opens up in the ground behind Renji, while Kazui Kurosaki, yes, Ichigo's own son, is seen opening one of these very mouths himself via a pretty unusual ritual. Now, I've gone on record before saying I'm unsure if Kazui is actually opening the mouth door himself, or if he's being manipulated in some way. If perhaps whoever the floating eyeballs belong to is maybe opening the gate for him, or making him think he's doing it, but whatever the case, this clearly leads to Hell as well. And interestingly, I mentioned earlier that I'm unclear as to what role the Hell Gates now play. But of course, these eyeballs that appear around Kazui and seem to be watching him belong to the skeletons at the gates. And again, those eyeballs materialize to watch Kazui for an unknown reason, seemingly reacting to his actions. Again, there's a ton of questions, but it's clear that Hell has its own movement and gateway system just like the other races. One of the more unusual phenomena associated with Hell is the arrival of phosphoplasm, which itself is a totally new concept in Bleach. Depicted as strange, eerie bubbles of a tangible purple gloop that hang suspended in the air. Although we've never seen or heard of phosphoplasm before, it is a known quantity to the Gotei 13, at least to some degree anyway. As phosphoplasm suddenly appears in the Seirete itself, Soifon doesn't seem to recognize it. She grabs a piece of it and doesn't know what it is, but upon inspection, Kyoraku identifies it as phosphoplasm, and it's this phosphoplasm's appearance that leads him to realize that yes, they have in fact been sending captains to Hell. Now, when Kyoraku identifies it as phosphoplasm, Soifon's response seems to indicate that she does at least know the name, even if she doesn't recognize it, and the other captains are also perplexed by its appearance. Soifon's comment about it not being reabsorbed back into the air, and the very fact that she can actually grab it with her hand, makes me wonder if phosphoplasm is meant to be a literal representation of the incredibly dense reishi that can't return to the Earth upon a powerful Shinigami's death. And so maybe Hell itself is absolutely swimming in the stuff. Now that Hell is leaking over into the other worlds, we are seeing it show up elsewhere too. And in the real world, phosphoplasm is clearly evident around Xyloporo at points as well. In fact, we can actually make out the Hell Gates appearing, manifesting behind Xyloporo in the real world in this particular shot. It's not super easy to see, but it's there. And interestingly, the phosphoplasm not only appears when these doors do, but it seems to be kind of rushing away from them as well. And that leads me to wonder, if the phosphoplasm has arrived in the Serete, does that mean a Hellgate has opened in the Serete somewhere as well? Then of course there's the Hell Butterfly, which may reveal itself to be part of a much bigger twist Kubo has in the works. For the entirety of the series to date, the Hell Butterflies have been synonymous not with Hell, but with the Soul Society. Despite their sinister name, these butterflies have been used regularly within the Gotei 13 to not only help guide the Shinigami through the Senkaimon and through the tumultuous Dangai passage, but also to deliver messages, as we've seen a few times throughout the story. And yet, just as Kubo closed out the Hell chapter, he dropped a huge tease, one of many, where Xyloporo asks Ichigo if he ever wondered why the butterflies have Hell in their name, even going so far as to remark that Hell has always been beside you. Obviously, this implies that not only do the Hell butterflies have some explicit connection to Hell itself, but it may in fact be a more literal connection than even first thought. Almost as though maybe the denizens of Hell could, I don't know, maybe see through the eyes of the butterflies or something like that. It does make me wonder how the Hell butterflies could operate under the Gotei 13's nose like that if they were somehow agents of the enemy, or how they even came to be so entwined with how the Gotei 13 works in the first place. The obvious answer to me is that at least at some point in the ancient past, Hell and its masters weren't necessarily seen as the enemy, so to speak, and maybe even aren't right now either, but instead acted as a genuine counterpart to the Soul Society itself, a realm that was also concerned with carrying out its duties as a means of ferrying souls, and so the two agreed to work together. They have to coexist. I mean, again, it goes both ways, right? Like, the Hell Butterflies may have been given to the Soul Society by Hell, just in the same way the Shinigami's own Zanpakuto were seemingly designed in such a way as to be capable of judging a soul and sending them to Hell if needs be. For that to happen, there has to be some kind of cooperation. The two sides work in tandem and don't seem to be diametrically opposed, though it's possible that Hell is now trying to renege on that agreement. But honestly, turning Hell into the enemy with a new arc feels, I would say, dangerous, risky for the overall health and stability of the Bleach universe. I believe it's in Can't Fear Your Own World where it's noted that Hell actually falls outside of the three worlds created by Reo, and thus is absolutely ancient, self-sufficient, and perhaps as old as the universe itself. So to go against them, and maybe even bring the realm to ruin or disrepair in some way as the result of a war of an arc, feels like it would have much bigger ramifications than something like Waco Mundo, for example. So there's definitely something going on with the Hell Butterflies, and the last thing I want to look at is this interesting scene where Ichika seems to somehow notice the Hell Hollows, or at least sense a strange presence arriving, before even the veteran Shinigami do. And I can't help but wonder if it's because she has a Hell Butterfly right next to her after arriving there herself. And you can see the Hell Butterfly in this shot, and Kubo makes a point of, well, pointing it out. It has a strange aura around it, the likes of which we've never seen a Hell Butterfly have before. And so I'm wondering if, because she was next to it, it somehow allowed her to sense the arrival of the Jigoku no Gaki, but again, we don't know for sure. Moving on, we also get a look at potentially some new enemy foot soldiers for Hell itself in the Hell Hollows or Jigoku no Gaki. While we don't know anything about them for sure, it seems likely that these are hollows who were sent to Hell via Zanpakuto, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Shrieker turn up like this at some point either. Interestingly though, all of the Hell hollows that we do see in the Hell chapter are gigantic, which could be a result of one of two options. One, either it's just a coincidence, and these were all massive hollows to begin with, or two, Hell itself has somehow turned them into the titans that we see in this chapter. And that second option is very possible, I would say, seeing how Ukitake's Sogyo no Kotowari was suddenly absolutely massive as well. But then we have to wonder why Xyloporo wasn't a giant too. But the Hell Hollows are intriguing in that they don't emit any Reiatsu whatsoever, meaning they are capable of taking even veteran Shinigami completely by surprise. The Hollows are strong enough that one of them sends Renji flying with a single hit, and another spears Kiyone through the side in what looks to be a pretty devastating attack. Though generally speaking they seem to go down just as easily as regular hollows, at least when confronted by vice captains once the fighting actually gets going. But what does it mean for them to not emit any Reiatsu? Does that mean they don't have spirit energy? And does the same go for Xyloporo? I mean, it seems like it does because Renji has no idea that he is appearing behind him until it's too late. And if so, what does that mean for these creatures' place in the world? While we are missing a lot of answers, I personally wonder if them not having spirit energy at all implies they are no longer souls. After having gone to Hell, it's possible they have become something else entirely, maybe even removed from the cycle of rebirth altogether. It's clear that these Jigoku no Gaki aren't just regular hollows anymore. Obviously, they all, including Xyloporo, possess a tattoo-like branding on their bodies that resembles chains, implying that yes, they are bound in some way, they are prisoners. Even Xyloporo, a self-proclaimed jailer, is bound too, and so is a prisoner himself. What this actually means is unclear, as Xyloporo can wield chains himself in battle, and he, along with the Jigoku no Gaki, seem to be able to freely leave Hell to attack the human world, at least since the Hell Gates have been broken open. The real insight will be whether the Shinigami are branded in the same way. It seems likely they will be, in my opinion, but we don't know that yet for sure. Also, it's difficult to discern the inner workings of Hell when these prisoners have seemingly broken out as a result of the gate being forced open. That kind of implies that they are being held in Hell against their will by some higher power, and that once the gate was broken open, this higher power was unable to contain them, at least fully. But anyway, perhaps most interesting is the way Xyloporo himself talks about Hell, and what it seems to mean, what it seems to do for hollows specifically. He tells Renji that Hell is great, and that he was able to cast away his hollow yoke, and his hollow hole is no longer bound to his flesh. Now, that's definitely intriguing. A yoke, by the way, is basically a fastening or a binding that goes around the neck of an animal, which then connects them to, say, a plough or something they are going to pull. Either way, in this context, it's clearly defined as being something that held Xyloporo and these other hollows back. This idea that their hollowdom was a weight around their necks that held them down, that dragged them down, and now having been cast into Hell, they have been able to free themselves from the shackle that was being a hollow. So, first of all, that seems to imply that yes, they aren't hollows anymore, but again something else entirely, as I speculated earlier. Xyloporo notes that his hollow hole is no longer bound to his flesh, and I know what that means, but it's also not entirely accurate. As we see from both him and the other Jigoku no Gaki, their hollow holes still exist in some form, but they are now affixed to the outside of their bodies. They are a literal part of their flesh, as opposed to actually being a hole within them, if that makes sense. And that's actually thematically quite important, because the hollow hole that used to permeate their actual bodies, that used to indicate a piece of themselves having been removed, was indicative of their lost hearts, of them missing something that would have otherwise made them whole again. But now it's as if hell has forcibly moved their hollow holes, filling up that space they were missing with something, and just instead shifted them to the outside of their bodies, almost as if hell was saying, you are hollows at heart, and therefore we won't allow you to be fully rid of your hollow hole. We will patch it up with something, but you will wear that hollow hole on your body forevermore as a branding, as a reminder of what you once were. So Xyloporos is now a ring that sits attached to his back, while the other Hell Hollows have their hollow holes attached to their arms, their heads, their faces, their waists, just any part of themselves, but crucially they are no longer technically missing anything. So Hell has given these hollows something, we just don't really know what. So, despite maybe being slaves of some kind if the branding is anything to go by, it seems like going to hell is made out to be some kind of a net positive for Hollows, though I imagine they are giving something up in return even if they don't know it. Xyloporo himself goes on to say that his pain and suffering, again emotions and turmoil that make a Hollow, well, a Hollow, now overflow from him like tears, and we see that he grows literal horns in response to that. So it's almost like being in hell, or now being a prisoner, a denizen of hell, amplifies those feelings. And so hollows are maybe naturally strong there, or they naturally resonate there. Again, if there maybe is some kind of sinister layer to this deal with the devil, so to speak, it could be seen that hell is perhaps taking more from them to give more in return. And that's manifested on their bodies. It feels to me like the emerging of those horns on Xyloporo is meant to represent him further leaving his hollow self behind, and embracing in real time the power of hell, which leeches off his natural hollow sentiments. Meanwhile, Xyloporo himself is apparently a jailer of hell, which would imply, again, he has some control over the denizens themselves, who in this sense would be prisoners, if he is a jailer or a warden of sorts. But again, interestingly, Xyloporo himself is also covered in the same chain-like branding as the Jigoku no Gaki, so it's likely he is just as much a prisoner as they are, at the behest of someone greater, someone higher up, someone who isn't a prisoner. And since he's later stabbed through the back and dragged back into hell by Ukitake, one has to wonder again what the dynamic is there. Is Ukitake a prisoner too, and fighting Xyloporo to try and help Ichigo? Or is he immediately placed on a higher rung than the former Espada, and is simply reining him back in? Also, Xyloporo's new, amazing design is quite telling. The chain branding on his skin seems to have a material effect on his actual body, as we see it originating from two separate points, a strange red jewel of sorts in Xyloporo's forehead, and a similar, albeit bigger one, in the Espada's chest. But not only that, the brand seems to negatively affect him too. It seems to take something from him, as we see one chain link running over his eye, and that eye seems to be totally gone as a result. One of Xyloporo's arms is also reduced to nothing more than flaming bone, which looks awesome, but again implies that hell is taking something from him at the same time. Xyloporo also comments on being clairvoyant as a result of being a jailer of hell, but as I've said in the past, I wonder how literal that actually is, considering it's fairly obvious that Ichika is related to Renji, though at the same time Xyloporo definitely seems to know an awful lot about the goings-on in hell, including the fact that Ichigo had his substitute Shinigami badge on him at the time, and that resulted in Ukitake's soul going to hell too, in that very moment. And then, speaking of Ukitake, there are the captains, who remain the biggest question mark on this entire thing. We know the Gotei 13 has been inadvertently sending captain-level Shinigami to hell for almost 1,000 years, probably, meaning there's likely to be a huge number of captains in hell already. At least from the outside looking in with what very little we know, the captains do seem to hold some level of inherent import over even the jailers, as they are given specific epithets dedicated to who they were as a Shinigami. Yamamoto is known as Court Guard Founder, Unohana is known as Death Sword, while Ukitake, the most recent captain to fall into hell, is quickly given the epithet Kamikake Godsworn. I absolutely would not be surprised to find that the captains who have been in hell for potentially hundreds, if not 1,000 years at this point or so, have completely taken over due to their immense strength, and were simply waiting for the day their original boss, Yamamoto, would return to their side before starting to make a move. I've said it before, but making the original Gotei 13, plus some additional captains from who we've seen very little like Ginrei Kuchiki for example, the main villains of the Hell arc, is an opportunity that is way too good to pass up, and would make for an excellent basis for the next main arc of Bleach. Alright everyone, but that's it for today's video. As always, I do hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you took something of value away from it as well. Let me know what you think about everything new that we have learned about Hell thanks to the Hell chapter, how this sets up Hell as the brand new location for the newest arc, and what you'd like to see from Hell as well moving forward. How do you feel about Hell's mouth-like doorways? How do you feel about these new Jigoku no Gaki Hell Hollows, Phosphoplasm as a concept, and of course how the Espada and the captains are being integrated here within Hell's brand new role within the wider Bleach universe? I'd love to get your thoughts down in the comments below, so do please let me know. Alright everyone, once again, thank you so very much for watching. Consider hitting subscribe if you haven't done already. Check out the other videos on the channel if you want to see more just like this one. And consider supporting me over on Patreon as well. Your support is going a very long way and does mean an enormous amount. So thank you all so very much. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.